Now, Doechii is a name or a face that many people have likely heard of or seen by now. She is one of the biggest breakout artists in the music industry and has one of the most popular records out right now overall. She has a few very well-known songs, and several of them have charted on the Billboard Hot 100, with Anxiety being the most recent. She is also undoubtedly one of the most talked about new artists in the game right now, and she seems to be appearing everywhere. However, with that success, there has been a lot of talk about whether her fame is genuine or if this is just another industry plant story. For that reason, I want to give you guys some background information about Doechii's story and dissect the truth about Doechii's success. Now, the majority of people only know 26-year-old rapper, singer, and songwriter Jayla Hickman, better known by her stage name Doechii, because of her current huge popularity. Doechii's story goes much deeper than that. She was raised by her mother in a typical working-class Black family in Tampa since she was 3 years old. She and her twin sisters lived in a single-parent household, moving around a lot, and never staying in one place for very long. This kind of instability shaped a lot of her early life, and is still evident in her music today. The influence of Florida is strong in Doechii's music. She even calls herself the Swamp Princess, a title that is closely linked to her origins, particularly with the alligator symbol, which appears frequently in her visuals, and is a symbol she carries with her everywhere these days. It's actually quite interesting to read about Doechii's childhood because, at first glance, you might assume that she's always been this bold, self-assured superstar. At least that's what I thought until I did more research on her. In one interview, she talked about how she was being bullied so much that she thought about ending her life. However, in that dark moment, something clicked for her, and she decided that she was the most important character in the film. She told herself that this moment of clarity was her claim on her identity, and it became a turning point for Doechii as she grew up. Doechii's mother kept her active in all kinds of sports and programs, but she naturally gravitated towards the arts. In 2012, she got accepted into a historically Black performing arts high school, where she trained in classical choral singing and graduated in 2016. At the time, Doechii had no real knowledge of what it took to make it in the music industry. She didn't even know what an independent artist was. But that changed for her during her senior year. When her best friends at the time introduced her to home recording, her friend had her own setup and was making music straight from her room. That was a moment that flipped a switch for Doechii. She started spending every afternoon at her friend's spot writing, recording, and uploading tracks to SoundCloud. And that's when she first found her love for music. By the time she graduated, she knew this was the path she was going to take. But one thing that happened before that turning point was her first real attempt at building something, a clothing brand called Stay Woke. Stay Black, it was more than just clothes. It was a message, a movement that pushed for racial awareness and being unapologetically Black.
Being unapologetically Black.
It's very exciting for me, and I'm going to be releasing my brand to you guys and doing an actual product review of the Stay Woke, Stay Black collection.
The brand didn't last long though, and that's when she experienced for the first time what it takes to start from scratch, figure out what people really want, understand how to deliver quality, and realize that even though an idea doesn't work out if it's not executed well, that lesson gave her tools that she ended up using in her music, where the product was no longer clothing but her. In May 2019, Doechii released her first project, a self-recorded release titled Coven Music Session Volume 1. It was composed of raw audio from a YouTube series she started called Coven Music Sessions. A year after recording them, she uploaded the live performance videos to her channel and finally packaged the entire thing as a project. Her journey as an independent artist began in 2016 when she dropped her first official song on SoundCloud, a track called Girls. She eventually took it down later, but re-released it in 2018 when she had a little more stake in the game. One of the tracks from the very early compilation Anxiety was not formally released until March 4th, 2025, 5 years later. At that time, Doechii was still figuring things out and maintaining her relationship with the small community she had formed. So she started recording her journey and sharing in real time what she was going through as she pursued her dreams. Was at the end of December 2019 and the beginning of 2020.
So I'm starting this thing where I'm deliberately making these digital diary documentation for the future.
Doechii discussed her desire to record her trip for herself and others, as well as for her future self. It seemed as though she was utilizing the camera as a means of self-expression, helping her navigate the uncertainty and turmoil that comes with attempting to produce.
I'm going to be just coming in every week or so. I don't know, I'm not going to put a timestamp on it, but I kind of just want to keep up, just document different things that I feel throughout this process and this journey. And I just want to document this moment and these moments because I want to look back at it and watch it.
Inspired by Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, she dubbed the 11-week series The Artist's Way, a personal video journal. Shortly after the second episode, a significant event in her life occurred. She lost her job.
I fired today. Either way, I'm gonna be straight. I'm just gonna go to a whole bunch of studios. Ask if they have any internships open. I have nothing to lose. I literally have nothing to lose. I have no place. I have no job. I have no children. Who gives a fuck? Who cares? Who fucking cares? I'm just gonna do it. I'll let you know how that.
And that's when she decided to focus on music even more. At the same time, Doechii was going through what could be described as a spiritual transformation, carrying the weight of rejection that accumulates after repeatedly trying to enter a room but being turned away. For instance, on January 12th, 2020, she shared a story about trying to enter the Roc Nation office in New York with the intention of simply walking in, finding someone at the top, and landing a record deal.
And this week I had some audacity to take my black ass all the way to Roc Nation. And I was like, I'm going to treat this shit like it's the motherfucking movies. I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to walk out with a songwriting deal, period.
However, the plan ultimately backfired because she never actually entered the elevator. Security stopped her before she could enter, and Doechii realized she needed to change her strategy. She would concentrate on 3 things going forward, and doing so served as her foundation and resulted in a personal breakthrough.
Y'all are going to have to tell me to my face that I'm crazy and it's not going to happen. You're going to have to tell me that over and over and over. I don't care at this point. And so I'm reaching this point in my life, in this period, where the only thing that I really feel like I have is my talent, my skill, and my audacity.
In one of her vlogs, Doechii discussed how she didn't realize she had infinite creativity until she started stripping those beliefs away. That process of unlearning the limits she had placed on herself was what really started to shift everything. DOI was gaining a lot of personal momentum not from attention or industry praise, but from doing the inner work of understanding herself, both as a creative and as a person. One of the biggest things she was struggling with at the time was negative self-beliefs, particularly the idea that she wasn't endlessly creative.
In the beginning of my weeks, I was talking about how one of my fears and creative blocks, a negative self-belief that I had, was that I would be a one-hit wonder, or I could only write one really good song or make one really good album. And that's because I'm limiting my beliefs not on myself, but on my source.
You know, the cool thing about this video series is that you could really see that growth was happening in real time. I mean, the energy in the first episode versus the 5th was completely different halfway through. Don't you feel like a completely different person, more focused and more grounded? This wasn't someone hoping things would work out. This was someone determined to make it, manifesting their own reality. But even with all that drive, she was still in the middle of figuring things out, mentally, emotionally, and creatively, however, through documenting that process. In real time, you could feel something starting to shift internally, not just in her music, but in her mindset. That internal clarity started inspiring new creative ideas as well. Around this time, she began shaping the concept for her next project, an EP built around a playful creative world, something she modeled after the imagination of Dr. Seuss. It wouldn't drop until later in 2020, but the foundation for her next project was already being laid right there in the middle of her figuring herself out. And that body of work became the one that finally got her recognized by the industry, By late 2020, that internal transformation was starting to take shape. On the outside, the groundwork Doechii had been laying behind the scenes was finally become invisible. She had finally figured out how to package who she was, something she had struggled with heavily in the past.
I just feel like I do so many things, and I'll be confused. I don't know. Shit, I'm over it.
More significantly, she had mastered the ability to express herself clearly through her music, visuals, and overall branding. In November 2020, after much work and introspection, she finally released the project, Oh, the Places You'll Go. The title was inspired by the late Dr. Seuss in his last book of the same name, Doechii, and she claimed to have admired his imagination as a child and the way his books created entire worlds. It became her mission to create something that made listeners feel the same way she did when she was a child reading his works. The project's theme was school, and every image she used around it adhered to that idea, from the look to the message. Everything was intentional during the creation of this project. She went back to her mom's house to record just to be surrounded by family and feel safe while she created. And during that process, she even hired a therapist, not for the aesthetics or headline, but with real intention to unpack her trauma and get closer to her truth. All the Places You'll Go was the project that really put Doechii on the industry's radar, specifically the breakout track Yucky Blucky Fruitcake started making noise. However, it didn't blow up overnight. It actually took a few months to catch fire. But by early 2021, the song had gone viral on TikTok, and Doechii had serious momentum. That wave of attention ended up catching the ear of Anthony Tiff, her now manager, and the president of Top Dog Entertainment. And at this point in the story, you know things really started clicking for Doechii. She had a clear creative vision. Her brand was unique, visually striking, and impossible to ignore. And most importantly, she knew exactly where she was headed. More and more media outlets began picking up on her name, and the buzz around her was growing fast. Then, in March 2022, it was officially announced that Doechii had signed with Capitol Records through Top Dark Entertainment as the imprint. A few days later, she released her first project under the major, an EP titled Brawls. Although technically the project had already been put together independently, so while it dropped after the deal, it wasn't a product of label funding, just timing. On the same day her signing was announced, one of the main things preventing Doechii from achieving her full potential before this point was a simple lack of resources. But once she had the support, she knew exactly how to use it. Within a few months of signing, she released 2 more eye-catching records. Doechii also released her first high-budget music video for the song Persuasive, which is a clear example of what happens when a truly creative artist finally gets the financial backing to match the vision that they have in their head. Insane and I'm Kind both tracks pushed her sound and her image even further into the spotlight. And that same year, she landed on the XXL freshman cover, which was a major co-sign for her. She followed that up with an EP titled She Her Black Bit TCH, which featured a verse from her label mate Siza. A few months later, she delivered a colors performance that went viral this time for a track called Stressed, which she released the studio version of just days after. And if you really pay attention, right here, right, you'll notice something. Once DOI got momentum, she didn't let up the gas. I mean, she kept going, she kept dropping, stayed active, and made sure to, keep putting herself in front of the world. And honestly, that's one of the most underrated parts of her story. The momentum didn't just happen on its own. She built it. And when the momentum came, she kept on striking. And she kept on striking. She didn't slow down. In fact, she tripled and quadrupled down at the start of 2023. Doechii dropped the biggest song of her career at the time, What It Is. She released 2 different versions of the track, a solo version, and one featuring Kodak Black. The version with Kodak Black debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 2023, and eventually peaked at number 29 that October. During that same period, Doechii also opened up for Doechii on her Scarlet World Tour, on top of delivering an opening performance at Beyoncé's Renaissance World Tour. So now she had all these major cosigns behind her, on top of the momentum she had already built for herself between the period of 2023 and 2024. She stayed fairly active, consistently releasing songs here and there. In between out of those releases, Nissan Ultima became another big record, and this was actually the lead single to her mixtape, which she would end up dropping just a month later in mid-August. 2024 DOI finally announced her new mixtape, Alligator Bites Never Heal. The biggest release of her career under a major label. It was a project deeply rooted in her Florida identity and her swam princess persona. The alligator's dying function as a symbol for survival is where the title originates. This tape was more than just a mixtape. It was evidence of everything she had been working toward and everything she had endured up until this point in her career, staying true to her vision and identity. DOI used to describe overcoming personal struggles, industry battles, and creative burnout in many ways. Denial is a River, one of the tape's most intimate and daring tracks, was released back in January and ended up being included on the album after the fact. The DOI plays the roles of both herself and therapist, recounting everything from failed relationships to addiction burnout and the emotional toll of Chase's success. Her voice and the struggle to survive in an industry that wasn't built for artists like her, or at least that's what she believed, continued the theme of survival beyond the title. Her mixtape peaked at number 12 on the Billboard 200 and went on to win Grammys for Best Rap Album, making Doechii just the third female artist in history to do so. A month later, she released the biggest single of her career, Anxiety, which was originally a 2019 home recording that went viral in early 2025 and was formally released with updated production and vocals. Doechii's success is one of those stories that doesn't really come around too often. This is someone who from the outside looked like the odds were stacked against her. She came from a tough background and she had talent from the start. But if you really take an honest look at her as an artist, it's not that she's the best rapper or singer out there. What seems to set her apart is her identity from the beginning. She had a clear vision and she chased that path relentlessly. Now, obviously, from the outside looking in, this isn't even half the story because I'm sure we all know this, but success like this takes more than just talent and vision alone. That's one of the reasons why people have called her an industry plan. A lot of people see the success and they draw their own conclusions, which has made a lot of people think that her success could have possibly not been organic. You know, after doing all this research myself, I don't really think there's anything shady about Doechii's success. The first thing we obviously got to acknowledge is the fact that the reason why you're seeing her in so many different places is because she's signed to a major label. Being signed to a major label means that she has a lot of funding behind her name. Now, the only reason why she has all this momentum behind her is because she built momentum by herself, which is why the machine. Okay, the labels, that's why they're supporting her, right? Like most artists who make it to this level, especially this fast DOI, clearly built the right relationships, got in the right rooms, and made the most of every opportunity that came her way. What also makes her different is that she documented her entire process, which is very rare. A lot of the doubt, insecurity, and confusion that comes with chasing a dream. You could literally see it in her face and hear it in her voice in those early vlogs, but she stuck it out. She pushed through all of it and came out the other side, not just a better artist, but a better person overall personally. I think the truth about her success really comes down to how bad you actually want it. And I know this is like very cheesy, you know, a lot of people probably clicked on this video thinking that I was gonna say, oh, you know, she got backed by these shady people and they're pushing this agenda and they're doing that. But honestly, a lot of times when you see someone who's extremely successful and, is resonating with a big group of people at the same time, just like that, and they're just going up, sometimes there could be some shady about it. But other times it's generally just the fact that someone is talented and that they did the work and that they figured out how to market themselves to the world. And of course, the relationships she built along the way definitely played a role, but the way she stayed consistent, the way she course corrected when she had to, and just kept going, that's what made the difference at the end of the day. She's an exceptionally talented artist as well, who refused to stop moving forward even when things didn't go her way. So personally, that's what I think. I don't think there's anything shady about her success. I think Doechii just really wanted this, and she ended up getting it by pushing through. And now her reality is that she's one of the most successful new artists out right now. But I want to know what you think about this, though. If you made it this far, drop a, little like on this video. I appreciate you guys for watching this video. If you're new here, my name is Blackie Speaks. Nice to meet you. Okay, thank you for subscribing. Welcome to the family. What are your thoughts on Doechii's success? She is one of the most well-known up-and-coming musicians at the moment, so I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say. I'll see you in the comments area below, but above all, please, I'll see you all in my upcoming video. Billy. P-E-E.